Oh, good morning and welcome to the donut shop at the beginning of the world. Hello, tribe. It is your hosts. I'm Dr. Mark Merriweather of Vorderbruggen and Misseswether. Yay, the crowd goes wild. I go wild. I like you.
I like you too.
Cool.
And I put up with you.
This is true. She does because I'm much taller than her, so she has to put up a lot of things to me. Oh. Okay, good morning. Hey, we already got people here. Hey, Gina. Hey, Sherry. Hey, Jody. So interesting news coming out of Houston ISD?
Well, a whole bunch of ISDs. Houston ISD is one of them. And a lot of other ones are also saying that they're going to be opening up virtually. And
like a tribe.
Then they won't have in-person instruction until like September, and most of the across the United States, most of the really big ISDs are saying the same thing.
That makes sense. Yeah, a lot of the big cities and so forth, they're still in the throes of coronavirus. So,
well, including Houston.
Oh yeah, Houston. No, we're the third biggest city now. I mean, everyone's shot or moved out of Chicago.
I think Chicago's still bigger.
Yeah.
But the point is,
hey, Evie.
I think a lot more people are probably going to be interested in finding out more about homeschooling. And
I'm waving to the people as they show up so I don't interrupt you.
We have been a homeschooling family. We've had kids homeschooled. We've had kids in public school. We've had kids in private school. We've had kids in online classes. And I've taught online classes. And we've had a co-op. So
homeschooling co-op.
The main thing that I want to let you know is if you were a public schooler or a traditional schooler in the last spring, and then you switched, you didn't switch to homeschooling.
You switched
to school in panic mode where your students happen to be at home. And there's just so much things going on that we thought, well, maybe people would have questions. And then the other thing I was thinking is, well, I know a lot of y'all already do homeschool or have homeschooled. And I had some other thoughts thinking, maybe you might be interested in seeing what's going on too, because there might be other people asking you for advice about homeschooling. And depending on what situation you're in, you might be in a situation where you could be homeschooling someone else's kids and decide if you wanted to offer up that service based on your experience.
Right. So, yeah, we were discussing yesterday that there might be opportunities for homeschooling parents to add an extra child or, something to their group. Mm-hmm. But all right. So continue.
Okay. Well,
hey, people.
I guess, is there a way that we can find out what kind of people are watching? Are y'all interested in hearing about homeschooling because you haven't done it before and you're in panic mode? Or is it because you already homeschool and you want to get more tips or ideas?
I think, why don't we start with an overview of...
I'm just trying to read all the comments that are coming in, and I'm not great at reading all of them. So it looks like most of you are probably in Texas. A lot of you have homeschooled before. Austin's not going to have in-person classes. About to start the 9th year of homeschooling. Love to hear other people's ideas with older kids. A great place to find algebra. Oh my gosh. Oh, this is really sad because I was looking forward to homeschooling algebra, right? Taught my kids math, and then most of my kids went into public school in 8th grade and started Algebra 1 in public school. Right. Math is one of the trigger subjects that scare people a lot, but there are a lot of resources out there. And then one of the nice things about homeschooling nowadays is that if you don't want to teach a subject yourself or you don't feel comfortable teaching something yourself, you can outsource that. You can outsource every single subject for homeschooling. You can say, I want to homeschool, but I don't want to teach any subject at all. There's actually online programs that will homeschool, that are homeschooling programs where they will teach every subject for elementary age kids through high school. They're just different programs.
So why don't we give some of those resources? Because I think that might be beneficial.
Let's see. Can you bring up so here are some of the websites or the resources that I like to share with other people who are new to homeschooling. So the first one is if you are let's start with if you're in Texas. So not that one. Let's start with the Texas Homeschool Coalition one. If you are in Texas and if you've never homeschooled before, one thing that I recommend is the Texas Homeschool Coalition website, because it will give you a bunch of advice regarding what's required legally. So things like, how do you go about and unenroll your student from public school? Because if your kid has been in public school before, then you have to go and unenroll them. Otherwise, you're going to be facing truancy issues. And you don't want to have to mess with that. And you don't want to have the officials mess with that. You just want to make sure that you do all those things legally to make sure that you get all of that paperwork in order. Texas is actually super easy to homeschool in. Once you are homeschooling, all you have to do is teach them. And that website will list the specific subjects that you have to teach. And how you teach them is pretty much up to your discretion. There's no mandatory testing. You don't have to keep attendance or any of those stuff. But you do have to withdraw your student from public school, because even if you say like we're in a situation where you were in public school beforehand, and you say, well, I'm going to homeschool next in the fall, even if they would have switched schools, like say your kid was in elementary school and would have been moved on to middle school, you still have to withdraw them, because they still get automatically registered in whatever the new zone school would be.
Gotcha.
It's a little bit different if you were in private school. Private schools, you just want to follow whatever their rules are for withdrawing them. I don't imagine that many people are going to be in that kind of a situation where they need to do that.
Yeah.
There's also lots of other resources on there, links to different groups, local groups, other resources. It is a Christian website, but it has a lot of information that you don't have to be a Christian in order to follow up on finding that information.
Cool.
That's one of the first things. You want to make sure that you know what the rules are. They're super lax in Texas. If you're in another state, they might not be. Try and find out whatever the rules and the laws are for your state. Okay. Then the next thing that I'd like, when someone's said, I'm kind of interested in, but I really don't know what to do, what I recommend is the Kathy Duffy website. And she also has a book. When I first found these pieces, I first looked at some of the books. So there's lots of different ways of homeschooling. So homeschooling could be anything from you have a mom taught class and mom is teaching, or dad is teaching all of the subjects, and you pick out each individual program to use. Or you can have what's called school in a box, where you just buy a program and it has all of the books for all of the subjects and you teach it, or the student teaches themselves. If you've got a high school student, there's a lot of stuff where if someone has been homeschooling all along and just continues into high school, chances are a lot of the teaching is going to be self-taught or online taught for a high school student. I wouldn't recommend trying to pick something that's self-taught if you've never homeschooled before. But this website, it has suggested resources and books for just about every subject and every grade, different ideas if you wanted to piece together your own, but it also has reviews of the school in the box programs. And it also gives you some guidance about different learning styles. One thing about homeschooling is that you are teaching that very specific child in front of you. You are not teaching a classroom. So you need to change your way of thinking to say, you know what, how can I teach this specific kid with these specific needs and work with that? Because when you're in a classroom, you have to teach the class as a whole, and it's really hard to accommodate all the individual quirks. And the kid who has that individual quirks, chances are realizes that and says, oh, I'm going to need to conform a little bit with what the group is doing. You know, in your classroom, maybe you would give the instructions, 3 different ways, because half the kids will need 3 ways to get it. a quarter of the kids will have got it the first time that you've said it, or just zoned out, but they understand that, yeah, the teacher's going to say it 3 times because, my friend over here is not going to get it the first time. And then you have another quarter of the kids that actually won't get it those 3 times, but then they'll find out from their friends what they're supposed to do. But you can't do it like that when you're homeschooling one kid, because either that kid's going to get it on the first time, and then you don't need to repeat it again, or they'll get it on the 3rd time, and then or they still won't get it on the 3rd time, and you're still going to have to repeat it, 10 times. So you have to figure out what works for your individual student, because you only have that one student for that one subject, unless you happen to have, twins or something that you're actually teaching the same thing at the same time. But even if you have twins, sometimes they need individual instruction and they need to be separated anyway.
Yeah, because there are a number of twins in the homeschool co-op that.
Yeah.
We've discovered that.
So this is what I like, is Kathy Duffy Reviews. It's got, like I said, lots of different resources for what to actually use to teach. Then if you are more academically minded and you're going like, okay, I've got older kids, they're middle school or up, or you just happen to be really more academically focused. The other one that I like is The Well-Trained Mind. And let's see if you want to bring that up. So The Well-Trained Mind started out as a book for homeschooling, and then it morphed into a website with a very active user forum where there are lots of homeschooling families that have questions and give advice. And then they also have online classes. So for example, this is the Well-Trained website. They sell their own curriculum. So they have lots of stuff there. Go ahead and click on the community link and the Well-Trained Mind community. So this is a very active, very, very active homeschooling board where there are lots of people that post questions, post anecdotes. They have suggestions, and you can see they've got a category for high school and self-education. Go ahead and scroll back to the high school one. The high school. There, one? Yeah. Go ahead and click that. And so scroll down just a little bit more. Do you see they have these pinned topics at the top? So foreign language online classes, high school chemistry, and there's one there. Do you see there's a homeschool high school math, and you can see it's got 3 different pages of things. Go ahead and click on that. So if someone was asking about math and algebra, so this has got reviews of tons and tons of different homeschool math programs, including lots of different algebra programs. So you can find out, what are the books that they can use? What are the online providers of classes? Where can I hit just tutoring? And there are several different ones. Okay. So it's just for discussion.
Yeah. So I see.
Now, so I'm not going to recommend any one specific one saying this is what you use, because I don't know your kids, your ages, what they're doing. I can tell you what we've used. But that's not necessarily mean it's going to be right for your kids. I mean, some kids need to move at a slower pace. Some people are racing ahead and are doing algebra when they're in 6th grade. It just depends on the individual family.
Cool. Hey, Dad's here. Hi, Dad. She's up. Cool. So it looks like a number of people are talking about homeschooling. They're liking the advice so far.
Okay.
And it's sprinkling over in Montgomery. Cool.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Next one, or what do you want to?
Okay. So math was one of the subjects that people are often afraid of. The other subject that people are often afraid of is writing. Can you show my list of links again?
Well, I got them individually up.
Okay.
I'd have to show my email, and there's stuff.
You can do that. Well, can you find the Brave Writer?
Yep.
Okay. Oh, you've got them listed there. Okay. So this is a website where Brave Writer started out as a writing program. If you want to teach writing, but you're afraid of writing, but you also don't really like any of the resources that are out there, and you don't want to just shove your kid at an online class, I recommend looking into this program. And they also have some advice, and they have online classes, but it really teaches you how to not be afraid of writing and how to teach your kids to not be afraid of writing.
Okay. And this is the one we used.
So yeah, I've used this one at various ages and various stages, and including, using their online classes and using just the materials where it's parent taught, and then also using some of just their lifestyle things.
Cool. Yeah, and I know both our kids, in my opinion, have turned out to be really good writers. So I credit you and this.
The other thing that I want to say is if you are considering homeschooling and your children do not already type at 40 words per minute without looking, I'd say that's what you should do right now. Actually, it doesn't matter if you're considering homeschooling or if you're going to stay with traditional school and your kids don't type at 40 words per minute, is get them touch typing. Even if they're first grade, teach them how to touch type.
Monkey Island or whatever?
Oh, okay. So yeah, it's Dance Mat Typing is the program that I use to teach my kids how to type. It was free. It's a UK-based program. It has a singing goat, and it's super annoying, but it worked. So what happened was, like I said, my kids have been in homeschooled and public schooled, and they did a brief stint of public school in first grade, and I found out in first grade that they had access to computers and they're using computers, and I said, I need to teach my kid how to type so they can type properly. And first grade, actually even younger than that, you can start playing around with this. I wouldn't recommend it for older kids, but if you're going to do online classes, which you might be doing, whether or not you're public schooled or homeschooled, you need to learn how to be able to type, because you're going to be typing assignments. They're going to want to type in the chat box when they're at online classes. And the sooner you teach them to touch type, the more likely that they actually will be able to do that versus hunting and pecking, as I glare at the lifelong hunt and pecker.
I learned how to type. I chose not to.
You still type,
type.
Choose to type, and you choose to hunt and peck.
I choose to peck. I know where all the keys are. I don't have to hunt. I can two-finger type
for example,
12 words a minute.
In the school, so our kids are going to go to private school for high school, and one of the requirements is you have to be able to touch type without seeing the keyboard at 40 words per minute, and if you can't pass that test, you can't take any of your final exams.
Okay, I won.
Now, you might not be sending your kids to private school, not that be that situation, but typing is something that is just super important and nowadays, because once you can type without looking at your keyboard, that means you can focus your attention on whatever else you are doing. If you don't have to think, how am I going to type this? And you can just type it, then suddenly you can type your question in that chat box while it's still relevant to what's going on in the screen in the class.
Yeah.
And you can get your stuff answered.
Plus singing goats.
But there's a lot of online resources. Like I said, Dance Mat Typing is if your kids are in elementary school. I think our private school, they recommend Typing Club, but there are lots of them out there. One of the main things to do is you do have to monitor it a bit, or you have to just trust the kid if they're old enough so that they're not hunting and pecking. Make sure that they actually are using the proper fingers in the proper places.
Yep. Yes. Yeah. And I will post a list of these links here, Tasha. Actually, let me go ahead and do that.
Okay. So the other website that I hadn't talked about was the Homeschool Buyers Co-op.
Okay, let me.
So there are lots of resources for homeschooling. There's homeschooling.
Where was it?
That one.
That one?
Yeah.
Okay.
So sometimes what's overwhelming with homeschooling is there's so many resources, you don't know what to do, and you don't know how much you want to pay for it. Well, one thing about this website is if you know what you want and you happen to look there, you can get really good deals on it where you can save 50% or more depending on what it is. And it's just another great resource. One thing that they have that I like is they have a discount for the Dora. It's a online test for reading assessment. If you have early elementary kids and you're not quite sure where they are reading, and you just want to give a quick test to say, hey, this is what we're doing, and am I on track at all or not? And it will do that. It's from Let's Go Learn. Go ahead and test and assessment. Go ahead and click that.
Where?
Test and assessment.
Oh,
yeah.
Cool.
And so this is, let's see, do they have Let's Go Learn? They might not. Do they still have that? No, they don't have that anymore. Oh my goodness. Okay, so it's been a while because since my kids were elementary schools.
Well, wait, they might. Let's see.
No, it's not there. Or okay.
Okay, yeah, it seems like they just have the.
So what actually happened was earlier this week, Meriwether was talking about, there's going to be interest in homeschooling. I said, okay, yeah, that's great. Sure, if you want me on there, we'll go ahead and we'll do it. But probably let's have it next week after all of the ISDs announce what they're going to do. And then he set it up for this week.
Yeah.
So, and he tells me this
I was thinking
last night.
Thursday.
He tells me this last night. By the way, we're doing this. And
someone has to play the role of the teenager in this house since all our kids are way more mature than like me.
So I wasn't able to get everything quite organized and look up all the websites. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Missing?
So it seems like let me do one thing. Let me just show this again. Homeschool is buyer's co-op, so this is really good for buying prepackaged curriculum type stuff.
Okay, so when you say prepackaged, there's two things. One, there's school in the box, which means it's going to give you everything that you need for multiple subjects, and they have that. But it's also, hey, I've got this one individual thing. This is my math program. I found it. It really works really well for my kids, so I'm going to buy this one specific math program. And they happen to be on the Homeschool Buyers Co-op, and then you can get it. So it's not just school in a box. It's not all prepackaged. They even have individual things.
Okay. Is there a cost to be part of the homeschool buyer? Okay, cool. So free. Okay.
So the other thing that I thought was interesting, since most of you out there seem to already be homeschooling, is you know that homeschooling isn't easy. And you also know what homeschooling is like. And you know that homeschooling is very different from traditional school. And a lot of people are going to be out there who did have their kids in traditional school, and they are going to have a huge childcare issue.
Mm-hmm.
And in Texas, at least, I don't know what it's like in other states, there are daycare rules. And if you were going to go and homeschool someone else's kids, you would have to make sure that you find out what the daycare rules are, because you would be considered a daycare. Now, if you have only 1, 2, or maybe even 3 kids from one other family, my understanding is it's actually fairly simple to set up as a daycare. You don't have to have nearly as many requirements. For example, you still have to have certain requirements as far as storage space and stuff like that. But as far as like reporting and licensing and all of that, it's doable without a whole lot of prep time. And so think about what you're doing. Think about the people that you know who might have a childcare problem. And if you trust that family and they have kids that are similar in ages to your kids, or maybe slightly younger, and you've already taught that age, it could be an extra source of income for yourself and a huge help to that other family.
Yeah, definitely. Because a neighbor is generally cheaper than private school. All right. Oh, so yeah. So just looking at something like Jenny Weston. Yes, definitely.
Memorizing math facts as an essential skill. So memorizing math facts. Okay, so there are math facts. I'm a big fan of memorizing math facts, but not rote memorization. So this is where there's lots of different ways of teaching math. This is also for if you have young kids, here's these 2 things that I will recommend against. One is don't teach skip counting unless you've tried other methods and they don't other work. Because
what is skip counting? So
skip counting is when you say, I'm going to try and learn to memorize my multiplication facts by learning skip counting. So skip counting is 2, 4, 6, 8, or 3, 6, 9, 12, 5, 10, 15, 20, or then, which is fine. Most people do that. They skip count, that's elementary school. But then you try and do things like teach skip counting your 7s. 7, 14, 21, 28, that are already, I don't know. I can't skip count that. I'm actually mentally thinking of going how to multiply
more
addition
coffee.
systems. Now, I'm doing my fingers. Skip counting is not nearly as good as teaching strategies. I actually developed a whole method that I teach with my kids. I taught it to my kids starting when they were 2nd and 3rd grades. And I think both of our kids, I don't think my kids are exceptional in math, but for both of them, I use this particular method for teaching multiplication facts. And both of them had them down in 2 to 3 weeks of daily practice of math facts. So if you want another session where I explain that, we can do that. It's way, way too difficult to go on that. Math facts, usually when people talk about math facts, they're talking about memorizing multiplication facts. But of course, your addition and subtraction are also facts memorized. But there are some programs out there that will say you don't force them to memorize them. You teach strategies, and then you have them learn the strategies, and then you apply the strategies, and eventually you apply them so quickly that they become memorized.
Nice. Okay. So here's an interesting thing from Tina. So the grandparents, how would that play into the whole daycare thing? I guess it doesn't matter. You could teach as many of your own kids or grandkids without having to.
So grandkids, they can homeschool too. If it's slightly different from a daycare because they are in your family. And you'd only be doing your own. If you're only doing your own kids, then you're not necessarily that daycare kind of thing going on. But yeah, that can be a great resource if you can homeschool your grandkids.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. The other thing is, right now, these school districts have said that they're going to start with, like I think Houston said they're going to start September 8th with online school and then not public school until October, in-person classes. Legally, with public school, you can pull your kids in and out of public school whenever you want to. They have to take your student back, and they can't force you to go. You could say, you know what, I'm withdrawing my student right now, and then come October, and you can decide, you know what, this really hasn't been working out. It's not working out for whatever reason. Legally, you can go and put your kids back in public school right then mid-year. Yep. I don't recommend doing it lightly, and I don't recommend saying, okay, well, I'm going to absolutely play around with the system, and I'm going to be pulling my kids in and out every other month. That's not good for anyone involved because kids do like to have some kind of stability. But don't think, oh, I've got to make a decision for the whole year. Don't think I've got to just homeschool for the entire year and I'm not up to that and I'm so scared, so I'm going to do it. But also think, hey, if you start off with the public school and you think this isn't working, yeah, go ahead and think about homeschooling and know that you can go back if you really need to.
Here's a great thing. Trading play dates with 1 or 2 other families. I almost think this might kind of skirt the daycare.
Well, for daycare, it is whether or not it is on a regular basis. I'm not going to go into the legals of whether or not it actually would be daycare. If it's on a regular basis, check out what daycare licensing laws are. If it's a hey, we're going to do this one time and then we don't know if we're ever going to get together again or when, then that's probably not daycare. But if you're going to say, hey, we're going to do this every Tuesday and Thursday, at least look into what the daycare licensing rules are.
Yeah, you don't want some Karen neighbor to narc on you.
Yeah. But the other idea is part of that is a co-op is like, yeah, absolutely. Co-ops are great. You don't like one subject, but you love another one, and you have another family that you want to share that. So one family teaches, all the science classes, and then another family teaches all of the history classes. That can totally work.
Yeah, to a bunch of students. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Cool. All right. We got 3 minutes left. Let's see. Oh, you're welcome, Tina.
Yeah.
So.
Any other questions? Or?
No, it's pretty quiet. I don't know if we had a lot of people here today or what. Maybe the non-parental members of the tribe just kind of slept in and go, no, we don't have to watch Misseswether this morning. That's okay. More coffee for me. But yeah, so if you have future questions, maybe we should have. Oh,
one other thing. So I said there's two things that I will recommend against. One was don't teach your kids skip counting. These are both elementary. The other one is if you are going to teach your kids handwriting, start off with lowercase letters. Uppercase letters are way easier for handwriting. They're way easier. But when you start handwriting, start teaching them handwriting with lowercase letters, because you don't know if your kid's going to be one of those kids that can't break away from writing in uppercase letters. They learn how to write uppercase letters, and then they go and they continue writing, and it's so much easier to do a capital N than a lowercase n. It's so much easier to write those letters in uppercase that you end up with kids that write in a mix of uppercase and lowercase, and then throwing in uppercase letters in the middle of their sentences where they don't belong, simply because they have that habit and they know that they can write it in uppercase well. So if you start off with lowercase letters, then you're less likely to have that issue. Yeah. And there are lots of different handwriting programs out there. The way they teach handwriting and writing in general in public school is very different from how I'd recommend it for a homeschooling one-on-one situation too.
Here's one last question that I think is kind of cool. Now, there are people using Skype and probably Zoom or other things.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. People are already using this. Homeschoolers have been using this. We have a homeschool co-op that I'm still a part of, and they had in-person classes until COVID hit, and they switched to doing homeschool classes, not homeschool classes, but they switched to doing co-op completely on Zoom. And so we'd have people were teaching their co-op classes using Zoom, and you can use any platform doing that.
We're running a little over, but that's okay. A lot of former teachers offer classes at home. Any science recommendations? Okay, so with science recommendations, again, it depends on the age of the kids, the interest of the kids, all that sort of stuff. I will say I've done a lot of foraging classes for different homeschool groups all over Texas. It's a little harder now to schedule with my latest job, but yeah, the foraging counts as botany and science, and I throw chemistry in there. And then here's another good question. What was your first Brave Writer class?
Okay, so
you need to sit up. So
I am. I'm just short. My first Brave Writer class, I wouldn't start with the first Brave Writer class. I'd start with their lifestyle and see if it resonates with you. And then kind of build from there, read the resources, decide how much you want to do yourself, because I will say their classes are on the pricier side. There are a lot of other websites out there that will claim to teach your kids writing for a lot cheaper, but then you don't know if that's going to work for your kids. If you like Brave Writer styles, like I said, start with the lifestyle. All that information on the website is free. See if it makes sense for you. And then it depends on the age of your kids. What I wanted to do with my kids was get them started with the idea of an online class. I eased my kids into one online class at a time, and I started off with their book club. And at that time, you could do a month to month on the book club. And so we did 1 month of the book club as a just get used to it kind of a thing. But if you want a little bit more, the nice thing about the Brave Writer is their classes are pretty short. They have 4 and 6 week classes where you can say, okay, I just want to get a taste of it and see what it's like, get a little bit of coaching without a long-term commitment.
Cool. All right. That was fun. Okay. Robert, let's see. Just now,
this is where I say, just be very careful with your time.
So limited time. Email me, Robert Merriweather at Foraging Texas. There's a link on the Foraging Texas website. It really varies on when and where, how far I have to travel, things like that. So,
but I would consider that to be more of an extra or an extracurricular kind of one-off kind of thing. It's not going to be an ongoing.
Yeah, I can't. Okay, it's after 8. I need to get to work. So thank you all for joining us at the Donut Shop at the beginning. Thank you, Misseswether. Yay, the crowd goes wild.
He's the crowd.
I'm very crowdish.
Yeah. Thank you also.
So we will see. I will see you tomorrow. I think maybe have you back in a week or two with new questions. If you would like more information on homeschooling, send me a note or comment here, and I will try and wake Misseswether up again early, like in 2 weeks.
Okay, we'll just see what kind of questions people have,
Okay.
and then I'll be happy to come back. But
Cool.
I mean, so much is so individual, but the main thing is, know that school at home and what people were doing in last spring, that wasn't homeschooling.
We're in the beginning of a new age, hence the donut shop at the beginning of the world. Okay, really got to run. Love you all. I will see you tomorrow. End of broadcast.